Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to bringing you scary stories. As always, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot and helps me keep creating this content. Alright, here's the stories. In the late 70s, my uncle was studying medicine at the University of Chicago. After a morning class, he decided that he would hitchhike back home to Lincoln Park on the north side instead of paying for a taxi. A man drove up in a Plymouth Satellite and offered my uncle a ride. The man looked normal and seemed friendly, lighthearted even, so my uncle got in the car and they started driving towards Lakeshore Drive. However, once they got there, the man drove south on Lakeshore instead of north towards Lincoln Park. My uncle told the man that he was going the wrong way and to turn around and head north. The man looked at my uncle, put his hand on his knee and said, "No, son, you're coming with me," and smiled at him. My uncle froze in panic, and when they hit the traffic near the south shore, he quickly unlocked the passenger door and ran away without looking back. A year or two later, on a cold December day, my uncle was having coffee in the cafe with my future aunt when he caught something on TV that made his blood run cold. He saw the man that had picked him up that day from school the year before. He had been arrested for the suspected rape and killing of 20 young men. The man on television was John Wayne Gacy, and he had removed the door handle of the passenger side door to prevent the men he picked up from escaping. I was driving a shortcut from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. 29 Palms is located in the desolate high desert of East LA. The shortcut was a 2-lane road through total nothingness, except for passing through Amboy, California. Amboy is a nearly abandoned town far below sea level as Death Valley, with a dormant volcano and lava field on one side and a salt flat on the other. It was also at the time a hotspot for satanic group activity. So I was driving by myself in the afternoon. I stopped in Amboy and snapped a picture of the city sign just to prove to the friends who had dared me to take that route to I-40. I got back in my car and proceeded to drive up the mountain range between Amboy and I-40. Once I reached the top, I am driving north through the canyon with a high grass on both sides of the road. Up ahead, I see some stuff in the middle of the road. As I approach, I slow down to see a red Pontiac Fiero stopped sideways across both lanes, a suitcase open with clothes scattered everywhere, and 2 bodies lying face down on the road, a man and a woman. I stop 100 feet or so away from the car. The hair on my neck is standing up. Being a Marine, I reach under the seat and pull out my 9mm pistol and chamber a round. Something seemed very wrong. It looked too perfect, as if it was staged. An ambush? Was I being paranoid? Something was just wrong. Getting out of the car seemed unthinkable, as it was a horror movie scene. I scanned the road and saw the line I could drive. I passed the guy on the road on his left, swerved to the right of the woman, behind the Fiero, and I'd be on the other side. I dropped into first gear, punched it, and drove the line I had planned. I passed the back of the Fiero without hitting it or either of the bodies on the road. I continued forward a couple 100 feet and slowed down so I could breathe and let my heart slow down. As I looked up into the rearview mirror, I saw that the 2 bodies had gotten up to their knees, and the 20 or so people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road by the car and bodies. At that moment, my right foot smashed the gas pedal to the floor, and I did not let up until I had to slow down for the I-40 East on-ramp. I will never know what would have happened to me if I got out of the car to check on the bodies or stopped by my car to get closer to them. Somehow I do not think it would have been good. It was 2001 and my friend and I were 17 and driving back from a late movie to my house one night. It was 2001 and my friend and I were 17 and driving back from a late night movie to my house one night. I lived in a pretty rural area in Maine, about 20 minutes from the nearest town. As we were driving down the highway through the woods, we passed a median with a car sitting in it, facing the oncoming direction with all of its lights off. Right after we drove past it, it flashed its lights, did a 3-point turn, and started driving behind us. We giggled, "Oh, that must be a gang initiation, we're going to get murdered," because this was Maine, and that obviously was not what was happening. The turnoff for my road was a few miles away, and this car stayed behind us the whole time. We made the left turn, and the car kept going down the highway. Phew! But 30 seconds later, we realized that the car must have backed up on the highway and made a U-turn to follow us. Now we were getting a little worried. There was still one more road to turn on before we got to my house, and the car followed us. Now we were legit freaked out. I had a long driveway, and the car followed us right up the driveway and almost up to my house, which had the lights on because my mom was home. We ran into my house just in time to see the mysterious car reverse back down the driveway and drive away. To this day, we have no idea why the car was following us. If they thought we were someone else or if they had bad intentions, we will never know. About 15 years ago, my mom and cousin were coming home from visiting my aunt who lived 2 hours away. The drive takes you through the desert and up the same mountains, but there's a shortcut you can take to avoid the mountains and shave off about 10 minutes off your drive time. The only problem is the shortcut takes you through the middle of nowhere. It's a 2-lane road with nothing for 30 miles. No houses, no shops, no lights, not even the roadside emergency phone booths. We're driving along the shortcut at about 11 p.m. when we spot something on the road. At first, my cousin thinks it's a rock pile, so she slows down to go around it. When she gets closer, she realizes it's a lady with a long black hair and what looks like a burlap shawl wrapped around her. She's crouched down facing away from my cousin. My mom says that she saw the lady might have been in trouble, so we pulled up beside her to ask if she's okay and if she needs help. My cousin says the lady stood up and looked at them and let out a shriek. She insists that her eyes were pitch black and her skin was white as a sheet, and she was really skinny, almost fake. I debate this because it was dark out and her mind could have just been playing tricks on her, but nonetheless it was enough to spook the hell out of her and make her punch the accelerator to get out of there. The lady briefly ran after them, but they lost sight after a short bit. They didn't stop for anything, not even a stop sign, until they got to the next town, where they stopped at a gas station to get something to drink to collect their thoughts. A few weeks later, my cousin was telling her coworker what happened, and she said it might have been a Skinwalker that she saw, and she's lucky she got away. That spooked her even worse now, so she won't go through that shortcut even when someone else is driving, and she insists on taking the long way. About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be at work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see in the movies. Anyway, I had been driving for about 45 minutes and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you can suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew it wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt like I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try to hide my car from anyone else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty, and I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock and it was 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later woken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. A thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal expecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now at the time, I thought it was a killer, the one that scratched the couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came out of it, there was a car parked off to the side of the road with the driver door opened. I slowed down just enough to see if anyone was there, and there wasn't anybody. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything. And all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, stuff like, hey you, get out of your car now. I got the heck out of there without stopping. I never saw the guy again. More of the story, don't sleep on the side of a deserted road. A couple of years back, my best friend and I went on a road trip to the States for a music festival. We met up with some friends, saw lots of things and whatnot. One of our friends came back home with us. He needed to get back home for school, and his buddies didn't want to drive him home yet. We decided to start driving him home in shifts. It took 24 hours for the full drive. Anyway, my story starts where I'm driving, the night shift, about 2 a.m. It is a beautiful, clear night with full moon, no clouds. Middle of the summer party type night. While noticing all these conditions, I also noticed that we have followed the GPS onto a back road and have driven into a huge valley. Open fields, not another car or house in sight, and it is important to note that we have not seen anyone or anything related to human presence for a few hours. Upon entering this valley, we lose our satellite signal. We have no satellite radio, no GPS, no cell signal. Cool beans, it doesn't really matter as long as we know how to follow this road for a couple more hours. About 20 minutes after entering this valley and losing our connections, we came across a bridge. As we get closer, I see a car pulled out on the side of the road. Not uncommon, people sleep in pullouts when they can. What is uncommon, though, is that this car had all the windows blacked out. With all the light from the moon, we should have been able to see at least partially inside, but it was completely black. Getting closer, we also realized it has no license plate that we can see. No big deal, we assume that it's been abandoned out here. That is, until we pass this vehicle, and almost immediately the lights turn on and it pulls out on the road. Now this is where it gets creepy. This vehicle starts tailgating us in the middle of nowhere, and we can't see who's inside or anything. Again, we brush it off. Maybe he's lost and needs to follow someone out of the area. That doesn't explain the windows being blacked out or a lack of a license plate. However, with this car following us, I start to get this super uneasy feeling. Subtle at first, but growing stronger. Soon I get a get away from this car ASAP feeling. I find it important to note that I do not frighten easily. I do not panic, and I have never gotten this feeling in times when I know my life is in danger. I push these feelings aside as it seems like the silliest response to a possibly explainable situation. That is until I see something in the middle of the road. Almost on cue, this car backs off as my companions and I, one who was asleep beforehand, tried to make out what was in the middle of the road. Coming closer, we see what looks like to be a body laying in the middle of the lanes. This is not a big road, and like I said, it was also a back road, still paved but very small. At this moment, and at the sight of what appears to be a body in the road ahead, we start freaking out. I, in no way, am stopping for one in this desolate, isolated area. There are no other vehicles around other than the one following us, and I can see no housing or lights as far as the eye can see. No cell service, no satellite, no nothing. I quickly tell the others that I am not stopping and I am going around or through. By this time we were almost on it and there was no room for us to go around, as there are no shoulders on the road and deep ditches on the sides. And we are close enough to see now that it is a scarecrow, and I drive over on top of it. This car, small enough to go around it, continues to follow. I speed up, it speeds up. I slow down, it slows down, until I punch it. About 2 minutes of this car slows down. It does a U-turn and drives back. Now my passenger turns to me and says, "I swear I saw spikes in that thing." Lucky for us, we were driving a huge truck and the wheel span was bigger than the scarecrow in the road, and we never touched it. It was another half hour before we reached the cell service and the satellite picked back up. It wasn't until we reached home at 5 a.m. that we remembered. During this time, there had been a couple of missing people reported in our Providence, ones who were on vacation driving home from the States who never made it back and were ever found. I and my passengers fully believe that we escaped some crazy Wolf Creek type death ourselves. We contacted the police about it and ended up making a full police report. However, we were unable to pinpoint the exact location. There wasn't anything we could really do other than file the report. We definitely didn't want this to happen to anyone else, and it was creepy as hell. Thank you for listening. As always, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Have a good night.